Nearly 1 out of every 4 women in America has been the victim of domestic violence. It's an epidemic that can happen to anyone, regardless of race, education, religion, or status. Dr. Ramona Probasco knows these facts by heart because she was once a victim herself.
Ramona Probasco married Ben at the age of 19. Their honeymoon phase was short-lived, and the starry-eyed teen soon became the black-eyed wife. In her book, Healing Well and Living Free from an Abusive Relationship, Dr. Ramona shares how she found true healing after 20 years of violence.
As you walk out these practical, not easy, but practical steps, you're becoming your strongest self.
And offers contagious hope and concrete steps to getting through and out of an abusive situation.
Dr. Ramona Probasco joins us now. We welcome you to the program.
Thank you, Terry.
The title of your book is Healing Well and Living Free from an Abusive Relationship, from Victim to Survivor to Overcomer. After 20 years in an abusive relationship, what was it that made you finally say, I'm done?
Well, I had to work through a lot of faulty thinking that I had surrounding my faith and what I believed God's perspective is on abuse and marriage and divorce. And so with the support of some wonderful counselors, a terrific church, and family and friends, you know, I eventually, in a sense, educated myself out.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned faith and church. Mm-hmm. We should mention that you did your, was it your dissertation?
Yes.
On this, the occurrence of this particular issue within the church,
yes.
Which, you know, a lot of people would say, well, how can that be? But it's prevalent, isn't it?
It is. And as a matter of fact, I studied over 500 women from a mega church here in the United States. And then I also surveyed 30 churches across the U.S. to see what they're doing in response to this issue. And what my research indicated is that what's happening outside of the church is also taking place in the church. So yes, you're right, the prevalence rates are the same or similar.
Well, let's go back to your situation. What were the first signs that you saw that Ben, your husband, was an abuser?
Well, when I look back to our dating years, because we dated approximately 3 years, there definitely was indication of disrespect, name-calling, some verbal abuse, not keeping promises, and, you know, just an overall disrespect for me and my boundaries.
So you grew up in a family where you hadn't experienced that in the same way that you did in your marriage. You know, I think for a lot of people, they just maybe make excuses for a while. I mean, is that what you did?
Well, yes, I didn't want to call it abuse. I didn't have the language for it. You know, I just...
You were young.
We got married very young. And honestly, I thought if I just pray hard enough, try hard enough, you know, do the right things, that this will stop, Ben will change, and we'll live happily ever after.
Yeah, I can love this out of him.
That's my phrase, that I really believed I could love him into wellness. And people have to want to be well.
Yeah. Well, they have to know they have a problem.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right.
You say in the book that abuse is not an anger issue, it's an entitlement issue. That was really startling to me. Talk about that.
Abuse is not driven by anger. Now, a person can look angry, they can even feel angry, but what drives abuse is a mentality, primarily driven by entitlement and lack of empathy.
Wow.
So because we all get angry, right? I mean,
sure, we don't all evidence
I get upset, but
way.
we don't abuse people. So we all get angry, we don't all abuse. Abuse is a choice.
What are some myths that exist about people who are in abusive relationships?
That's a fantastic question, and there's a lot of them. For instance, people will say, well, he or she had a bad childhood, and so therefore now they're taking it out on me. And that the link between a painful childhood and domestic violence is very weak, because most people who grow up in a situation where they're experiencing abuse feel empathy, they feel compassion. They don't want to reoffend. That's the last thing they want to do. So, or things like it's circumstantial. You know, he or she lost their job, or they have a difficult boss, or
something that excuses it away.
Right.
therefore not dealing with it. I want to talk a little bit about leaving safely, because I think whenever I hear the story of someone who's trapped in one of these scenarios, whether it's by their own hand or some other set of circumstances, I think, well, it's scary to leave, especially if you have children. Sometimes they're put in the middle of what's going on between the two adults. How does one leave safely from an abusive relationship?
Well, that's a very good question, because abusers, first of all, don't allow themselves to be left easily. And statistically, the fatality rate goes up by 75% when a person attempts to leave. So the most dangerous time is when you try to leave. So safety planning is critical.
So you don't just say you're going to leave and then sit for a while you process.
If you're in a situation where you are feeling imminent danger, of course, you need to leave. There's no time, in a sense, to plan. But if there is time to plan, a wise safety plan is very, very important. I have that on my website, where I walk people through the steps to prepare to leave. To prepare to leave, when they leave, and actually after they leave.
Speaking of after they leave, one of the things you write a great deal about in the book is the importance of forgiveness, not for the other person as much as for you in being totally set free.
Yes, yes. Forgiveness is a huge part of healing well. But I always tell people, you know, that they're not on anyone's timetable, that the Holy Spirit is working in each of our lives. And so forgiveness is not something we have to do, it's something we get to do.
Yes.
And ultimately it frees us from that power, that control that that individual had over us. And then, of course, forgiving ourselves is a huge part.
And probably the hardest.
It was for me, and it is for most.
Yeah, but there is life
after abuse.
After all of this.
Yes.
Tell me about Tim.
Oh, yes, my sweetie. He is wonderful. And I truly believe that we attract where we're at. And that's not to be a shame-based statement, but I worked for many years. I stepped out of private practice and I went to counseling, and I did the healing well that I write about in the book. And I really believe that I met him because I did that work, and he did his own work. And so I'm so blessed. I mean, I wake up every day to a hot cup of coffee.
Wow.
It's just, it's a dream. It
How
really
wonderful.
Is.
How wonderful. Should mention you're married to Tim. You
Yes,
have a
yes, I
wonderful life now, and that life is available to others as well. You know, that's so important for you to hear that. If you're in a relationship where you're dealing with or exposed to abuse, you need to know there's hope on the other side of that. Dr. Ramona Probasco's book is called Healing Well and Living Free from an Abusive Relationship. It is available nationwide. Highly recommended. Thank you. So good to have you here.
Terry. Thank
Bless
you.
you.